Margaret, good morning.
Good morning.
So good
Thank
to
you
see
so
you.
much for having me.
Well, thanks for being on the weekly briefing. This is our kind of weekly kickoff of looking at the data behind the conversations. And today we're going to talk about forecasting. I heard you have quite a passion for forecasting, but so awesome to have you. You're from Mindbody, and maybe just to kick it off, I would love to get a sense of the mission behind the work you're doing at Mindbody, and we'll kind of use as a way to jump into the data.
Sure. Yeah. Mindbody, it's such a great company because our goal is to connect the world to wellness. And so
Right.
we do that through, we have a software that we use for businesses to help connect with consumers that are looking to either get healthy through fitness, through homeopathic remedies. And then we also have a consumer app that helps our consumers connect to these businesses and find ways that they can explore the 7 dimensions of wellness. So it's a really great business, especially in a
Yeah.
time like COVID. Having
Oh my gosh.
having this as a way for people to find wellness has really been important.
I think we all need wellness right now in a very significant way. I think
Yes.
it's awesome that you're trying to connect everyone. Let me ask you the forecast question. What's hard about forecasting and driving that mission and having predictability on that?
Yes. So forecasting is so interesting because it's very much tied into sales skills, and so I think there's this misbelief with reps that what number you're going to hit is a mystery, that you don't know how you're going to get there. And I think changing that belief that there's actually a science behind forecasting, and then helping them understand if you are consistent in how you're running your sales cycles, you're loading your data, then the data
Yeah.
won't lie to you. And then you'll know where you stand. And so I think a lot of it's more getting reps, getting sales leaders to buy into this belief that, forecasting actually is a very powerful tool. And it's a methodology worth understanding.
So 57% of reps, and we'll get into the data in a second, are not very accurate at forecasting. And I think as you think about our sales careers, you learn how to sell and go through sales cycles, but forecasting is a bit of this art that you learn a little bit later. And I'm curious, what has inspired you? When did you get the forecasting bug? When did you start to develop that rigor, and maybe what influenced that?
Yeah. Well, I love to know the why behind things. And I was very fortunate when I first started selling. I had a manager that this was just part of teaching you how to sell, was teaching you how to manage your pipeline. And so, I was an athlete growing up. I'm very goal driven as a person. And so I want to know how to get to my goal. And so I was very passionate about forecasting because it's like, you're telling me that I'll know at the start of a month if I'm in a position to hit or not. Like, yes, sign me up. How do I do that? And so it started very early in wanting to hit and exceed and achieve goals. And then seeing the results come from by investing energy here, I was absolutely able to see that would drive the results that I wanted.
Let me ask real quick, what was the sport that you did?
Swimming.
Swimming. All right. And
Yes.
very numbers based as well, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Swimming's a lot like sales, where it's very individual, but you're also part of a bigger team. So there's a lot of parallels for sure.
Yeah, I played tennis myself, very similar, individual
Yes.
and team. Well, let's look at the data. We'll look at sort of the closing inspired coaching, and starting with the stats that we've looked at across the Chorus platform. But this is where I pulled out the 57. So 57% of reps are below average performance on kind of forecasting behavior. 43% are forecasting better. And so this is a challenge for us. And I'm curious, what's your read on this? Is this the world that we're living in today?
I got to be honest, I'm pleasantly surprised. I actually, I think, this is probably, as an average, it probably makes sense. I'm sure there are some leaders out there that are looking at this going, gosh, I would love to have 43% of my team accurate. And I think a lot of it ties into what skill level you've got on your team, how new it is versus how advanced. But yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense that fewer are good at forecasting. I think this is still definitely an area that we can be better at as sales professionals.
What are the 43% that are performing above average? And in your experience, what are they doing differently?
Yeah. So, I think they're really strong at discovery.
Yep.
Because that kind of sets up the rest of the sales process. If you're understanding if you're understanding the client and who else they're looking at, and getting out in front of what roadblocks there might be to your deal, as well as helping them understand what the process is going to look like, right? So much of the sales process, so much of the sales rep's responsibility is helping them understand, like, here's what the process is going to look like. Here's kind of the key milestones for you. The reps that do that, like, they set the stage early on, then they're typically also consistently really good at being able to pull the right people in at the right time. And then, they're confident in their ability. So you don't get to, it being at a final sales stage and the rep not wanting to call it because they're just not sure, right? That should never happen. So the best ones, they kind of set the stage very early in those early interactions, and then it builds from there.
So the best is asking those right questions, setting that stage, multi-threading or bringing people in. I mean, how do you you're developing the next generation of great talent of sales leadership that you're bringing in and sales professionals. How do you teach that?
One of the things, for better or for worse, that I would do as a manager and that I do with my managers is I'm very repetitive in my questions.
Okay.
So, and I think some of that is like, I don't know if you've ever had somebody do this to you, but like, you almost, because somebody asks you the same question again and again and again and again, and like you start to internalize that. So when you're on a sales call, you're like, geez, Margaret's going to ask me for this. I better ask for it.
Sure.
So that's been part of it, is just there's accountability. And then I think there's also the coach in me, right? It's like, where are we falling down? Where are things breaking down for you as a rep? And then really helping them understand that. Because there's a direct correlation to sales skill. So usually if the forecast, they're having issues, there's typically something in a sale, like some sort of sales skill that they need to work on. But then, when it comes to like forecasting and pipelines, it tends to be a very repetitive series of questions that you get asked again and again.
I mean, I love it. I think that, just going back to the mission, connect the world to wellness. And it's like, when we get the new sales professionals joining, how do we do that faster? How do we make sure that we don't accidentally not connect somebody to wellness because we didn't ask the right questions or bring the right people in? And it's just so critical. It's just amazing, the industry that we're in sales and the problems that we get to go solve. Let me ask you a little bit more about the velocity. So preparing for sales cycle velocity, and specifically looking at momentum between meetings. So when we look at the average days between meetings, both won and lost, it's about a week. So 7 days is what we see when we're winning deals. It's a bit longer when we're losing deals. The gap gets wider. And what's interesting is that it's longer than what we used to see. We were moving, the gaps were shorter before the pandemic. So we're seeing a bit of a longer sales gaps between here. Are you seeing this, and what's your read on this data?
Yeah, we haven't, and interestingly enough for us, we've definitely been, impacted. I think our technology has been uniquely positioned in that, for us, we're enabling what we call like a low touch experience. And so it's kind of become a need to have for businesses to create a safe environment for their customers to return to those businesses. But when I look at this, it's so interesting because momentum is everything in a sales deal. You think about like conversations that you have and how much of that information you retain a week from then versus a couple days later, right? It's really like you kind of almost have to like have the same conversation again if you let it go too long. And so, I think this is one thing, again, the best sales reps, they don't get off a call without a specific next step, whether it's a meeting, a follow-up call, but they have a time and a date when they're going to follow that person. And that's such a critical part of ensuring that you maintain momentum. There's also that part of setting the stage at the beginning. Our buyers I work with our SMB and mid-market, and SMB, there are a lot of people who got into their business because they were really passionate. They have no idea how to run a business, and they most definitely don't know how to buy software. It's just not something they do very often. So our job is helping educate them on what the buying process looks like, making sure that they're clear on this is what's going to happen. This is kind of a reasonable time frame. And then as a rep, you actually get to set your sales cycle when you do that.
Isn't it interesting? I think that when I look back at my own sales career, the days when you used to sell, which is excited about it, a little nervous that you could get off the track. And then the days that I think what you're getting at is that you're just partnering, you're helping people to buy, and you're the partner, and there's a joint commitment on these things to move it forward. You shouldn't be on eggshells. You just need to put it all out there.
Right. And I think, I try to remind, especially newer reps they're getting the hang of this. You're a consultant, right? If you think about what they do day in and day out, they might be having, 2 or 3 meetings a day with, they could be talking to 20 different businesses a month. And you think about how much experience they're getting of what are the challenges these businesses are facing, what do they see the best businesses doing well? Like, you actually know way more than your customer does about their business. And so you have to change, you have to think about yourself as a consultant and a partner as opposed to a salesperson, because that's really what you are. You have the luxury of a lot of interactions. And so you're a coach, you're a guide, you're helping them work through this because this is their first, but this is like your 100th.
Margaret, what are some of the creative tactics that you've put in place when you find that a deal, I don't know, the next meeting gets canceled, the types of things that can start to delay? How do you break through that noise, and how do you coach your team to do that when deals do start to get unpredictable?
Which has been quite a bit, are we closing because of COVID? Are we staying open? It's been a really interesting time for our customers. I think, so it's really interesting because I think what we've really tapped into is the importance of empathy. I think when the deal starts to break down, trying to understand what is it that's making it break down. And if you've set a good foundation, you've built rapport, whether it's with your champion or a key decision maker, then you can have a conversation like, hey, what's going on, right? How can I help you? Is there something I can get you that's going to help? And I think that's been a huge part for us of, we've really tried to meet our customers and our prospects with empathy of just, where are you at right now? And how might we best serve you? And sometimes it may be challenging them, right? Because sometimes there's something that they're scared of, and you have information that's actually going to help them. Like, you have to be willing to push back on them or challenge their thinking process. So that's a little bit general, but I definitely think leading with empathy is important.
We saw a lot of empathy back in March. We were looking at the data. We saw that demos, they used to start at minute 10. They started at minute 12. We saw 2 minutes of empathy back in the early days of this era. But the point about shifting out of the lane, meaning that you go from kind of being on stage and performing to, hang on, let's go partner up and not be in that act. And what do you find when you see reps that you're building kind of go from not being nervous, but being sort of on point to being really authentic? Really, it's sort of when you see reps and customers start to get into the texting level. Something's different once you're there, when someone allows you to do that. How do you coach people to get into that authentic sales side?
Yeah. Oh, we can talk about this for hours too. You just hit another passion area. I think if I was going to try to simply answer it, it's one of the things that I try to convey to sales reps is, we all have strengths and they're different. There are sales fundamentals that you need to understand. And then what you need to do is make it yours, turn it into your voice, and leverage your strengths to do it. And so I think this is such a tough thing, especially for new reps, right? Because we have them shadow calls, we have them listen to the top rep. And so what they try to do is they try to mirror that behavior without understanding what the person's actually doing. And so in order for somebody to be genuinely authentic and to have confidence in what they're doing, they have to understand why they're doing certain things, why they're asking certain questions, and then asking it in their voice. Because, you can sense when somebody's not being authentic, when they're not being genuine. And so that's when I try to help people understand how to be authentic, it's like, you don't need to look and sound like this person, but you do need to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah. And then understanding why they're doing it, what you're doing, come up with how that sounds for you. And you actually have to come up with it.
I think that your point about authenticity is that it isn't about necessarily replicating. And I think back at my sales career, we're all still selling, but it wasn't actually as much of that. It was raw passion for knowing that I had remarkable solutions that can completely change the way people were going to work. And so it's like, how do we make sure that we get that across? Because we're about to fundamentally change and help people be successful. But I'm always seeing these different styles. It's fascinating to see what works for people. And maybe the common word there is being true to yourself. And and true to the why you're calling someone. And
well, and that's, I mean, again, this is a whole bigger topic, but that is so much to do with where you sell, because it goes back to, what do you need to be the best sales professional? Like, what is it that, like, for you, it was passion for your product, right? It was like this fundamental belief that you had something that was better than anything else was on the market, right? And so you need to be in a place that offers that, right? And so I think that's the other piece of it, is like, there's a whole bigger part of the solution, which is where you sell makes a really big difference in how you sell.
That's right. I was always the person that said I couldn't do the ice cubes to Eskimos. I just have to pick a great product and be very lucky to introduce it to people. Let me get a little bit deeper into the data here. One of the other areas we're looking at is just the time between a first call and a last call, so sales cycle. And I think I think you mentioned earlier that you're in between the mid-market and SMB is the zone that you're selling into. What's required to drive a fast and effective sales process? These days matter.
Yeah. I mean, I sound like a broken record. It's the setup, it's the beginning. It's understanding, who you're selling against, and are there other competitors, that they are also evaluating that have buying cycles that you're going alongside. Who needs to be involved? SMB is kind of nice because usually there's not more, there maybe are two people, right? SMB tends to be faster because there's just fewer people that have to be involved. You typically have access to the owner, the decision maker, the champion, like all the things. So, and then what is again, setting the expectations of what key things are critical for them to make sure that they're properly evaluating your solution, and kind of like a realistic time frame for them to do that. And then, it depends on your sale, but if you can back into a timeline too, right? It's like, usually there's something driving a decision. There's something that they're wanting to have the software or, whatever they want software. I'm biased towards that, but there's something that they're trying to buy, whatever it is you have for. And so that's the other thing that helps drive urgency, is what do they need it for, and backing into when they would need to have a purchase made in order to have it ready.
That's right. They got their own mission to go hit. But you mentioned competition, and we were talking earlier. What some reps are comfortable asking about a competitor. What's your thoughts on that setup?
This one always tickles me, because it's competitors is like this scary thing that if you don't talk about it, they don't exist. And the best reps, they fearlessly ask about it, right? Because what they understand is that when you ask about the competition, you know what variables are at play. So you know who you're working against. And then, if it's somebody who's come inbound or outbound, it doesn't really matter. But if you know who you're up against, hopefully you're having the first conversation with them. You can set landmines for your competitors. If you know who they are, then you can, again, coach your customers, say like, you definitely want to ask them about these things, and they're things they don't do well. So I think that's what's great, is like, you kind of get some control over their buying process by talking about the competitors, because you can plant information, give them things to ask about that do help them evaluate, but also, put you in a better position.
I think it's an awesome point. When we look at the data, even if I look at my own team and I look at the talk tracks that lead to deals winning versus when we don't win, it is interesting. If we talk about a competitor 3.4 times more, which versus dodging, we win the deal. And I think that unstoppable confidence in your product and making sure people understand it is critical. So to your point, people are talking to competition, and we're foolish to assume that by not talking about it, we're not introducing something new.
Right.
It's out there.
I think there was we did a value selling training with our team, and I think it was something like buyers are 63% of the way through the buying process by the time you ever talk to them. So you think about what they've acquired and learned, 2/3 of the way through the sales process. It's quite a bit. And your competitors are definitely involved in that.
Well, I think I totally agree. And I think that what we're finding, not only are they all the way halfway through, but now our sellers are partnering more. We're finding, especially right now, that we're seeing a 20% increase in sellers working together and joining each other's meetings. And this might be because we're working from home. It's easier to join. We're also finding that the CSM participation with AE meetings, and this is looking at the most recent October data, it's 41% higher than what we were doing in Q1. And we're seeing a 32% increase in sales engineers joining AE. So we have a lot more team selling going on. Why do you think that is? And are you finding that this is a signal we could use in the forecasting?
Yeah, oh, for sure. We definitely, for us, we heavily use sales engineers on our calls, and we've seen that in our win rates. We've actually measured it, and we do see an improved win rate when a sales engineer is involved. And what I love about it is, it's another person that is strategizing on a deal with a rep. And so, I'm a big believer that, you prepare for your calls. You don't just go in and wing it. Even if you're really, really good, you still need to do some prep work. And so it's a great way to make sure that you're presenting a presentation or you're having a call that is relevant to the customer. And then you are intentional about when you're pulling in that sales engineer. What is their purpose on that call? Why do you have them there? Are they purely there just to answer any really technical questions that come up? Or, do you want them to show the product? How do you want them involved? And so that's been really beneficial. And I think it's one of those things too, our customers' expectations have grown. There's so much that they can do in research about our company. And so when they do talk to us, when they do reach out, they want to know that we've done the same. They want to know that they know we have access to all of their information too. And so I think what's great about having, either a CSM or a solution engineer is that you can really tailor the conversation to them, in mid-market. Maybe it's even, you mock up a view of what it could look like for their business to use your solution, right? I mean, you have to evaluate if that's a good use of resources or not, but potentially that's a great way to make sure that they can see themselves in your technology.
I've always loved the authenticity. When sales engineers join meetings, there's something special about the way that the meeting just fundamentally changes.
They don't care.
They don't care. And the customer realizes that. And all of a sudden it's a normal conversation of just people trying to solve problems and coming together. And it's beautiful.
That's such a great thing to tap into, because I think, unfortunately, sales reps still have a stigma, and even really good ones, they're still overcoming that stigma. And so, when you're right, when you bring in somebody like that, it's very valuable. We've even, we do a thing called second voice, where on your stat of other reps joining calls, where, another teammate will call a customer that maybe has gone dark or isn't responsive to try to get the person back on the phone. And it's just amazing sometimes how, like, just a different voice, it really helps, or it just gives a sense of importance, right? Because, like, somebody else is showing up this call, there's a sense that, you're important to them, and multiple people are involved in your buying decision.
It is amazing how the response rate to a second touch, especially at a senior level, maybe the first touch can be hit or miss, depends, but second touch is incredibly high response rate of, oh, sorry, we do actually want to talk, or just everyone's busy right now. Well, let me end on one piece here, Margaret. We just did a big announcement yesterday on the Chorus site, where we launched the data that we're sharing right now. We just put under this data conversation intelligence, and we just launched this live interactive site where everybody can go through the data and drill in, drill out to everything we're talking about. We have 10 different pages. We've analyzed over 35 million calls. So I just want to encourage people to have some fun, jump into the data. And Margaret, so great to connect with you. I love the energy and love what your company's doing. Boy, do we need that more than ever right now. And I'm sure the small businesses need all of our support more than ever right now.
Yes. Well, thank you. And thank you for the research that you're doing to help salespeople. I'm a big believer that there's so much data and science behind sales. And so that the more information we have, the more we can inform the strategies that we put in place and have confidence in our abilities as reps. So thank you for the work that you guys are doing as well.
Mission faster. Love it. Margaret, thanks so much. Cheers.